The history of macOS. macOS, short for Macintosh Operating System, is a line of proprietary operating systems developed by Apple Inc. for their Macintosh, Mac, line of computers. The first version of macOS was released in 1984, and since then, it has undergone several major updates, each adding new features and capabilities to the system. The first version of macOS, named System 1, was released on January 24, 1984, along with the Macintosh computer. It was based on the Macintosh Toolbox, a set of software development tools that were used to create Macintosh applications. System 1 was considered to be a revolutionary operating system, as it was the first to use a graphical user interface, GUI, as the primary means of interaction with the computer, rather than the command line interface used by most other operating systems at the time. In the following years, Apple released several updates to macOS, including System 2, 3, 4, and 5. Each of these updates added new features and capabilities to the system, such as support for improved graphics, networking, and multitasking. In 1991, Apple released macOS 7, which marked a major overhaul of the operating system. macOS 7 introduced new features such as virtual memory and protected memory, as well as a new, more modern user interface. It was also the first version of macOS to support color in the Macintosh line. The next major update came in 2000, with the release of macOS X. macOS X was a complete redesign of the operating system, built on a new, Unix-based foundation. It introduced a number of new features, such as support for preemptive multitasking and protected memory, as well as a new Aqua user interface. In 2001, Apple released macOS by 10.1, which included a number of new features, such as support for CD and DVD burning, and improved support for networking and internet connectivity. In 2002, macOS X 10.2 was released, which included support for Apple's new iApps, such as iMovie and iPhoto. In 2003, Apple released macOS by 10.3, which included a number of new features, such as improved support for networking and internet connectivity, and a new feature called Expose, which allowed users to quickly view and switch between open windows. In 2007, Apple released macOS X 10.5, which included a number of new features, such as support for 64-bit applications and the ability to run Windows programs on a Mac using virtualization software. In 2011, Apple released macOS by 10.7, which was renamed as macOS Lion. It was the first version of macOS that did not have support for PowerPC-based Macs. It introduced new features such as the Mac App Store and Mission Control, a feature that allows users to view and switch between open windows and desktops. In 2012, Apple released macOS by 10.8, which was renamed as macOS Mountain Lion. It introduced new features such as iCloud integration, and a new feature called Power Nap, which allows the Mac to receive updates and perform certain tasks while the user is away. In 2013, Apple released macOS by 10.9, which was renamed as macOS Mavericks. It introduced new features such as improved support for multiple displays and support for Apple's new iPads as secondary displays. In 2016, Apple released macOS Sierra, which introduced new features such as Siri integration, and the ability to unlock a Mac with an Apple Watch. In 2017, Apple released macOS High Sierra, which introduced new features such as support for the new Apple file system, and improvements to the built-in Photos app. In 2018, Apple released macOS Mojave, which introduced a new dark mode and a redesigned App Store. It also included new privacy features, such as improved control over which apps have access to a user's data and location. In 2019, Apple released macOS Catalina, which introduced a new feature called Sidecar, which allows an iPad to be used as a secondary display and input device for a Mac. It also introduced new security features, such as the ability to run apps in a protected sandbox environment, and the ability to use an Apple Watch to unlock a Mac. In 2020, Apple released macOS Big Sur, which introduced a completely redesigned user interface and new features such as Control Center and Notification Center, similar to those found on iOS. It also includes further improvements to security and privacy features and support for Apple's new M1 chip. macOS has come a long way since its first release in 1984, and Apple continues to develop and improve the operating system with new features and capabilities. Today, macOS is widely used by professionals, creatives, and everyday users, and is known for its ease of use, stability, and security.